So it makes me wonder today, as we try to plant churches and as we go to church and as we try to do church, I often wonder if we really know what it is that we are doing. You know, we talk about in our church the worship hour. But what does that mean? What do we mean when we say we're going to worship God? The Bible says that if we are going to worship God, we're to worship Him in spirit and in truth. You know, well, what if we don't know what that is? What if all of these years we've been doing it wrong? What if we just don't know? We just sing the song, the promises that I have in you. Well, did you know that God puts promises that He has for us, in us, for Him? How many of you asked Christ to be your Lord and Savior today? How many of you have asked Him into your heart? How many of you have made a commitment that you would love Him unconditionally? Well, those are promises made to God. Well, you know, He's going to get, He's going to require an account of those promises. Don't we hold God accountable? Lord, I pray, I read my Bible, I tithe, I go to church, I bear witness of you, and I expect now for you to provide for my needs and help me through my troubles. So we hold Him accountable, and when He doesn't do it the way that we think it should be done, we get a little upset, don't we? We start saying, well, what kind of God does this? My wife and I were having a conversation at lunch earlier, and it's funny that discipline lacks across the board. But did you know that if you don't have discipline, you have no control? And if you have no control, you have chaos. And if you have chaos, you have anarchy. See? Because chaos leads nowhere but to rebellion against that which tries to control you. Now, in a home, for instance, as my wife and I were talking, we knew this young lady who was working, and she was like 19 years old, and she got pregnant out of wedlock. And so the mother goes what we would deem medieval on her. You know, kicked her out of the house. She wasn't going to have it. That's not the way she was raised. That's not what she was geared up for. And so her mother made her leave the house. You see, you're already shaking your head. Because in our societies, we say that's not the right answer. But Jesus says, what does righteousness have to do with unrighteousness? Whenever you allow sin into your life, it has the propensity to spoil the whole environment. So there has to be order. Turn with me, if you will, in your Bibles to Luke chapter 19. In Luke chapter 19, Jesus addresses our duties. He addresses our duties, and he's going to require an account of the duty that He gave us to do. And this should separate this whole confusion of who's the pastor, who's the deacon, who's the elder, who's in charge. Because Jesus assigns each and every one of us a duty. He gives each and every one of us a charge. Well, that's where we need to focus our attention, not on somebody else's charge. However, no charge or no assignment goes without the benefit of the other. In other words, they marry each other. Everything ties together. Read with me, if you will, or follow along. It says in 19 verse 11, now as they heard these things, He spoke another parable, because He was near Jerusalem, and because they thought the kingdom of God would appear immediately. Folks, if you're not watching the world around you, they're still believing that Jesus is coming immediately. I'll share with you again. They have now in place, and they've already had their dedication service of the new sacrificial altar that they're going to put in the temple over in Israel. See? So things are happening. Things are coming about. But Jesus goes on to speak. A certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. What Jesus is saying there is, I'm coming and I'm setting up my kingdom. See, he's talking about us. He's talking about right here that he's the certain nobleman and that he came into our country, his own creation. But he's using this as a parable. To do what? To receive for himself a kingdom. And it says, so he called 10 of his servants, delivered to them 10 minas, and said to them, do business till I come. The original King James says, occupy till I come. In other words, don't slumber, don't get lazy, don't get weak, do business. Be smart about it. So he tells a parable. But his citizens hated him. You know, Jesus says this. If the world hates you, just remember they hated me before they hated you.
Yes, amen. Yes.
And if you're not doing the Lord's business, then the people are going to love you.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the Lord's business, 9 times out of 10, everybody's going to hate you.
Yes.
Now, I can testify to that, being a preacher, pastor, teacher, and so forth. I've got letters at my house that I've had people write to me calling me the devil and the Antichrist and the destroyer of his church. I rejoice in that. I wear that as a badge of honor. Because here's why they hate you. You ready? They can't rebuttal you. When they can't rebuttal you, the only recourse they have is to hate you. So Jesus says, take care of my business. Do business with me. But the citizens hated him. He goes on to say, and sent a delegation after him, saying, we will not have this man to rule over us. So it was that when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants to whom he had been given the money to be called to him, that he might know how many men had gained by training. Here's what that says. Jesus has gone to prepare for us a place. We know that. He said, if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Most Christians know that. However, most Christians think that Christ is not going to come back, that his kingdom is here on this earth, and that they don't need to work as long as they need to be. But that's not what Jesus said. He said, occupy till I come. Do business till I come. That's why people such as your pastor, myself, and other religious leaders and dedicated Christians don't know how to quit. We literally have to be killed to stop doing. Because we understand that Jesus says, I'm your retirement plan. When I come and get you, then you can retire. And that's why we're dedicated to what we do. Because we know that that's the task. But here's the other side. To the people who go to church and support the church and financially give and prayerfully and witness and help the church, that's your business. That's the business that God gave you. You're supposed to continue doing that. You're not to get lazy. Nor are you to be stagnant. What that simply means is you're happy with what you have and you really don't want to do anymore because you're tired. He says, don't grow weary in well-doing. See? And Jesus has gone, he comes and gets us, and now he's requiring an accountability. Brother here earlier just read that. That's why are our churches empty? Because nobody wants to be held accountable. Be honest about it. How many of us really want to be held accountable for the commitment that we made to God to serve in the capacity that he gave us in a church, in a mission, in a project. How many of us really want to be held accountable to it? Nobody. Here's why. Because we've been taught that nobody has a right to tell somebody else what to do, and that nobody else has a right to judge. Guess what? Nobody's doing any of that. You know why? Because you stopped doing it. They didn't stop. They're just reminding you, hey brother, remember now, your commitment is to God, not to me. And if you study Deuteronomy and you read over in the epistles, Jesus, Paul, God, they all say it is better not to make a vow than to make a vow and break it.
Yes, amen.
So, all I'm trying to help you do is keep it. Does that mean that you don't drop the ball every now and then? Doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean you might be down the wrong path? Doesn't mean that. It just means that when you are made known the truth, you do everything to get back on the road.
Amen.
And to stand up and to do the things that God has required of you.
Yes.
See? The story goes on to say, in verse 16, then came the first saying, Master, your mina has earned 10 minas. And he said to him, well done, thou good servant. Because you were faithful in very little, have authority over 10 cities. And the second came saying, Master, your mina has earned 5 minas. Likewise, he said unto him, you also be over 5 cities. Then another one came saying, Master, here is your mina. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What do you mean? Think for a minute. Put yourself for just a moment in God's shoes. Now we sing praises to God about what a faithful God He is, how He provides, how He does, and God is never wrong, God is always good, and so forth and so on. And we give God all this praise. And so God just simply says, I want you to go and do this for me. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. I will provide. I will meet all your needs. I will do what's necessary. I just need you to go. That's the story here. And this one servant did nothing. He kept it. Now I said that, and I'll parallel that to this. When Christians don't share their faith, there's a question about their faith.
Yes, amen.
See, when you don't share it, there's a question about it. And Jesus is going to require an answer. Because we will say to Jesus, yeah, but Lord, I asked you into my heart. I asked you to save me. I asked you this. He said, yeah, you did. What'd you do with it? That's the parable here. See? And he says, look at what he says. He said in verse 21, for I feared you, because you are a severe man. You collect what you did not deposit and reap what you did not sow. And he said to him, out of your own mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. It goes back to what I just said. The church, the leadership, they do not judge you. They only go on what you do. So whenever people get upset, they don't go to church, and they get mad at the church, and they get mad at the leadership, Jesus has given us an example here. Go back and look at yourself. What did you say to that church? Now, being a university professor and being in the academic arena, I have to deal with this on a daily basis. I have to deal with people who come to me and say, Pastor Mark, I'd like to take your courses. Okay, here's what I require. They get involved. Then all of a sudden, they don't want to do what's required. And then all of a sudden, now they get mad at me because I'm a Christian and I'm supposed to be forgiving and long-suffering and tolerant and all these things. And I look at them and I'm like, doing? What are you doing? And they're like, well, I want to be used of the Lord. No, you don't. No, you don't. You say you do, but you don't really want to. So I ask the question again, what are you doing with that which God has given you? What are you doing with it? What am I supposed to be doing with it? Well, take your Bible and turn to Colossians, if you would. And here's the thing. We talk about being sold out. We talk about being dedicated to God and things, and that's all well and good in and of itself. But I should put a little warning sign here, especially with the young people. When you understand what's being said, you are then held accountable by God for it. You cannot hold your parents accountable. Does that make sense? You following me? You know, because use the simple thing, and here's how young it can happen. Simply at the age of kindergarten, can kids be held accountable? Because you don't go to the kindergarten class with them. But when they go into kindergarten class, they know what's expected. They know I'm not supposed to be talking. I'm not supposed to be having my crayons out. I'm not supposed to be doing this. The teacher didn't say for me to do this. So even as young as 5 and 6 years old, kids can know when God is speaking to them. And they know when it's time for God to speak and also time for them to answer. I said that to say this, and that's a precursor because normally adults want to hold kids back. They think they're too young. You know, well, they don't really understand. Oh, granted, and you do. Think about what I just said, and I laugh because we're so messed up, we don't even know what we're doing, and we're going to stop kids who say they do. Think about it. But here's what we're supposed to be doing. Look at chapter 3. Look at verse 22. He says, bondservants, and this is Paul writing to the church in Colossians. He tells them, bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of your heart to God. So here's what that says. I come to Christ, Lord, I'm a sinner. And I know that if I died today, I would go to hell of my own free will. But Father, you have come so that I might have freedom and escape that hell because of your love for me that you showed on the cross. And that you died for me. And that you were buried and that you rose again. And I ask you to come into my heart and to save me and to cleanse me from all unrighteousness. And you can be my Lord, my Master, and my King. Now think about what we just said to God. We made a commitment and we gave him authorization to be. So Paul here is telling Colossians, the church, he's saying, obey it. Whatever it is that you're told to do, obey it. Not with eye service, not with lip service, but as if you're doing it unto God himself. Amen. Now, if you stop and think about that for a moment, how many of us serve our daily lives as if God is the recipient of everything we do? I guarantee you we would love our lives, we would love our wives, we would love our kids, we would love our job, we would love our money, we would love everything because God gave it to us and wants us to use it for his purpose. Amen. You say, well, I go to church. Is that all you do? If that's all you do, great. That tells me you don't work, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't do anything. Now, how realistic is that? He said, and whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men.
Amen.
See, so what am I telling God today? I think the best answer for the church and a lot of would-be Christians and said Christians, I think it would be, Lord, I just don't know what I'm doing anymore. I've allowed the circumstances of life get the best of me. I've allowed situations govern how I see you instead of the way you see me. And I think there needs to be real repentance. As much as we use social media, a lot of people use social media as a bypass to go to a local church. That's called eye service. That's called lip service. If you're so lazy you can't get up out of your bed, get dressed, get in your car, go to your local church, support your local church in both your tithes and your offerings and in your commitment and service to God, in that local church, shame on you.
Amen.
Because you're not doing the will of God. And he says that everything we do is going to be tried by fire. You ever wonder why he said by fire? I mean, hell's bad enough, but can you imagine? He's going to test our works. You know why? Because fire is a purification method to pull out the raw and natural elements of things. So you have to heat it up and see how well it burns. And he says in 1 Corinthians, Paul writes there to the church in Corinth, he says, every one of us must give an account of himself to God. And his works will be tried to see where they stand, whether it's hay, wood, or stone, or gold. And if it stands, it's a reward. If it doesn't, it's cast out. So if I ask you today, how much do you think you should get paid by God today? What do you think is a fair wage for you? How do you analyze it? Well, here's the first thing. Am I right with God? What that means is, do I still appreciate the salvation he gave me? The song we just sang, Dying He Loved. See? Does that still impact my life? Secondly, does it impact it enough to where I'm going to study to show myself approved unto God? A workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Have I subjected myself to his lordship in everything that I do? Now, I'm not telling you to stop your job or get a divorce. I'm not telling you to do any of that. I'm telling you that if you're going to work as if you're working for God and not the man. Because your work will be a whole lot better. You don't have to worry about promotions. You don't have to worry about pay raises because God's going to deliver it in due season. See? So am I committed to that? And then thirdly, you want to look at, can others testify to that? The reason I say others is because Jesus asked the disciples, who do men say I am? Some say you're Elijah. Some say you're Elijah. Jesus says, yeah, but who do you say I am? I said that to say this. If somebody was to ask me about you, what would I say to them? Here's something I said about a funeral. I think I said it last week. You'll never hear anybody say to anybody at a funeral, that man died and went to hell. You'll never hear that at a funeral. Why not? What if that was the testimony? What if that's what I assessed from that man? What if he told me one day, well, if I go to hell, you're going with me? What I'm saying is, here's the testimony, here's the assessment. I never once heard him profess Jesus as Lord. And nothing in his life demonstrated that he did. Is that a fair assessment? Sure it is. Because if that's his life, that's his life. But the thing is, what if they said it about you? Can they see Jesus in you? That doesn't mean that you try to please everybody. It is, am I pleasing in his sight, in God's sight? And can man say, I'm shocked that happened to him. He was such a good man of faith. You know, he was humble. He did all the things that he believed God wanted. You know, he was ready to serve. See, that's a testimony. We can testify about ourselves all day long. Look at what a great man I am. Well educated, solid marriage. Who cares? What do you see? So when Jesus asked the disciples, who do you say I am? And Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, you've answered correctly. See, people should be able to say about us, there is a man of God. There is a child of God. There is a woman of God. Amen. Not that they're a member of Iron Bible Fellowship, which I would recommend. Not that I'm married to the pastor. Not that I'm the pastor's son. But that I'm a child of God. Amen. See? And if they can't say that about you, what do you think they're saying? Now that's the answer to the question. What are you doing? What are you doing with Christ today? It is my prayer that you have a fellowship by the relationship that you have with him. And not the fellowship thinking that you have a relationship. But because of the relationship, you have fellowship with him. And that when you come together, look, let me say this, okay, just so you get it. God is here. How do I know that? How do I know? I just made a profound statement. Because he didn't say if you have 100 people here, I'd be there. He said, where 2 or 3 are together, yes, I'm there. Amen. See, it doesn't matter about the other 500 of you. God can be where 2 or 3 are in the midst of chaos. God can be in the middle of your troubles because you're seeking him and not the alternative. So I can proudly and boldly and humbly say that God is here because I know that most of you here today want to feel his presence. Amen. Want to know that he's here. Yes, guess what? Relax. He's here. But what's he saying to you? That's the difference. See, that's where the rubber meets the road. Because where the presence of God is, sin gets revealed. Because there is no darkness. And if we walk in darkness, the light shines on it and makes it known. See? So, what are you going to do with God today? Are you going to do the work that he gave you? Are you going to use the tools that he gave you? Or are you going to wait another week to find out? Well, brother, let me pray about it. Mm-hmm. Sure, go ahead. You pray about it. Listen, once you know what God's having you to do, there should be a prayer about it. God called me to be a preacher, teacher, pastor. You call me to preach, I'm going to preach. Unless I'm sickly dying, I'm going to preach. Because that's what I do. I teach. That's what I do. And I pastor. Because that's what I can do. I don't try to get gain in this world. Because it's not what God has for me. See? So once you know what God wants done, maybe you need to repent of the faults or the sin that may be in your life before you can really be what God wants you to be. Well, don't fight it, just do it. Ask God for forgiveness. He says he'll forgive you. And go on and try to be the man of God that he's designed you to be, or the woman of God that he's designed you to be. Don't worry about everybody else. And when you walk in that unity with God, you have that peace of God that Paul says surpasses all understanding. He said, I can't believe how peaceful my life is. You think about that. And let God have his way. Father, I thank you so much for your many blessings. Thank you for your word. Father, most of all, I want to thank you for Jesus. Thank you for sending him to bear and to pay the sin debt so that we don't, as mere mortals, have to worry about trying to come up with a payment plan or any amount of money to try to pay for our redemption. But that you loved us so much that you took care of that for us. But Father, it is only fitting and right that we give it back to you in our obedience to what you have us to do. So that we're not asking the question, what are we doing? But that we are saying, Lord, I am here, I'm ready, and I'm willing to do whatever it is. Have your own way. In Jesus' name.